So, and what we found, you just said correctly, we see that it's not a level playing field. It is not that people from all over the world seem to evenly contribute. Instead, we see huge geographical clustering. So almost all of the market is divided into only a very few number of countries. The most important freelancer destinations, so where most of the work goes, is India, the Philippines, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Ukraine, Russia, Serbia, and the United States. So only very few countries almost kind of completely dominate this market. And this is surprising if you think about it, that theoretically you only need a computer and internet infrastructure to contribute. There's no barrier to entry whatsoever. So we find that it's really these few regions like Eastern Europe, Southern Asia, and North America that dominate the market. And our main understanding, our main reasoning why this is because these places have the infrastructure, the skills, or the enabling institutions that allow people to contribute. Of course, there's also people from other high-income countries, but if you think about it, let's say you're in Switzerland, one of the highest price, highest income countries of the world. If you compete with other freelancers from around the world, it might be difficult for you to set a competitive price, let's say for logo design or web development. So there is clearly a price effect. But what we were expecting, what we haven't seen, is we would have thought that more projects go to really low price destinations. This is also the hope that some people, and also within the development community, thought that this would happen. So places with very low price levels, let's say in sub-Saharan Africa, they could theoretically benefit the most from online labor markets, because they could set prices that are somehow, on the global average, which would be a huge bonus for people in these communities, in these areas, to work on such projects instead of getting the low local wage levels, or maybe no jobs at all, because these jobs don't exist there to some extent. But unfortunately, there is a lot of clustering, and most of the jobs go to particular places only.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, especially around sub-Saharan Africa, because another benefit of sub-Saharan African labor is that it's the same time zone as European, right? Or at least very close. It's not the same as a European working with freelancers, say, in the Philippines, which is essentially on the other side of the planet. And therefore coordination and those sorts of things can become difficult. In a previous episode, we're talking about remote teams with Dr. Professor Louise Mahler, and she was making a point around the touch points with remote teams and those sorts of things, and that seems to be resolved in many ways in sub-Saharan Africa. So essentially, then in summary, the challenge is where infrastructure exists for remote work to be able to be facilitated effectively. And so I guess what that means, in some ways, internet connection has to have a big part of that, or contribute a big element to that. Is there also social infrastructure, things like that play into part? Things like education systems, linguistics, anything like that came up?
Yes, absolutely. This is the important finding, and one of the key findings, or the key, stepping stones in this whole story that we're telling in the paper. You also asked us for, unexpected results, and this is clearly an unexpected result. When we started working on this, emulating earlier studies that looked into things like, let's say, the geography of Wikipedia contributions and these kind of things, so other platforms, we thought that it will not tell us too much to dig into traditional socio-economic and infrastructure variables. We thought originally, most likely we look into this geography, and the geography will just be, scattered all around the globe, or kind of unexplainable with these traditional measures. But instead, when we really try to, for example, look into internet connectivity, and I was really, really challenging this, I thought for some reason we were expecting that the share of internet, or let's say the share of people having broadband access, or the quality of internet on the ground, would not play such a big role. But instead, it is really, after numerous tests and numerous different robustness checks we did, we found no, it is really just a mirror. So the online labor market is a mirror of the real economy. The most important effects are, as you just said, the internet infrastructure, which is quite obvious. Without internet, you can't be online. But here more also as an enabler, a place that has good internet infrastructure also has other types of infrastructures and enabling institutions. And these are, most importantly, GDP per capita, as an indication of the strength of the local economy, We measured this, on different scales. We didn't look only into country level, but also subnational data, where we were very lucky to be able to assemble subnational data both on OECD, that is high income country level, as well as global south country level. And other elements are the education level, of course, the local price level, whether the country is generally English speaking, and what we call the IT specialization of the economy. So we could measure this with different variables. For example, within the OECD countries, we had a share of ICT related economic activities on overall gross value added in this region. On the country level, we had the share of ICT exports over GDP. So kind of how far the economy is already within, let's say, ICT related services. And then, little surprise, the Philippines and India particularly are traditional outsourcing destinations. Over a long time, as back offices for US, American, and British companies, they have already specialized into these areas. And it seems to be that really those places that have an edge, that have an advantage in being close to the IT economy, also thrive in the online world. This is, if you think about it, seems like, okay, yeah,